Identity is mostly just repetition, doing the same things over and over until you convince yourself that's just who you are. Like how you always order the same coffee, not because you love it, but because ordering something else would mean admitting you don't actually know what you want. And knowing what you want is supposed to be this basic human thing, but most of us are just pretending we figured it out when really, we're all just making educated guesses and hoping nobody calls us out on it. Which parts of you are actually you and which parts are just things that happen to you that you never bothered to change? Like how some people spend their whole lives hating mushrooms because they had a bad experience with them when they were 8 years old and never thought to try them again. As if taste buds don't change, and people don't grow, and preferences can't evolve. But we hold on to these arbitrary limitations because they feel like proof that we exist as consistent beings, instead of just random collections of experiences and reactions and learned behaviors. There's this moment when you realize that the person you've been being isn't necessarily the person you have to keep being. And it's like waking up from a dream you didn't know you were having. Except instead of relief, there's this crushing weight of infinite possibility. Because if you can be anyone, then you have to choose who to be. And choosing means taking responsibility for becoming, instead of just accepting what you already are. Most people never have this realization, or they have it and immediately bury it under routine and habit, and the comfortable lie that change is too hard or too late or too risky. But the truth is that every single day you wake up and decide to be the same person you were yesterday. And that decision is so automatic, you don't even notice you're making it. The scariest part isn't that you can change. It's that you can change and still be you. Or maybe you can change and discover that the you thought you were was never really there in the first place. Just some habits and preferences and reactions that felt solid because you never questioned them, but were actually as fragile as spider webs in the rain. Nothing is fixed and everything is negotiable. And most of what we think of as our personality is just stuff we decided once and never reconsidered. The beautiful thing about being human is that we're constantly becoming different versions of ourselves, whether we notice it or not. The cells in our bodies replacing themselves every few years until we're literally not the same physical person we were before. But somehow we expect our minds and hearts and desires to stay frozen in place, like we're museum exhibits instead of living, breathing, changing things. You can wake up tomorrow and decide you don't like the color blue anymore. And that's not a betrayal of who you used to be, it's just information about who you're becoming. But we treat these small evolutions like acts of treason against some imaginary authentic self that probably never existed anyway. Because authenticity is just another story we tell ourselves about why our current preferences and opinions are more real and valid than all the preferences and opinions we used to have or might have in the future. There's something liberating about realizing that your personality isn't a prison you're stuck in, but a costume you've been wearing so long you forgot you could take it off. And once you remember that you can take it off, you start to notice how it fits and where it chafes, and whether it's actually serving you or just hiding you from yourself and everyone else. I was talking to someone the other day who said they wished they could be more outgoing, and I asked them what was stopping them, and they said that's just not who they are, as if introversion was a medical condition instead of a learned behavior. And I wanted to shake them and say that shyness is something you do, not something you are. But I knew they weren't ready to hear that, because most people aren't ready to hear that the limitations they've accepted as fundamental truths about themselves are actually just choices they made so long ago they forgot they were choices. It's not that we can't change. It's that we can change, but we've convinced ourselves we can't, because change requires admitting that the person we've been being wasn't inevitable, or necessary, or even particularly good. Just familiar. And familiar feels safe, even when it's slowly killing us, or keeping us small, or preventing us from becoming whoever we might be if we stopped insisting on being who we've always been.